On the 16th of December 1944, the Germans launched Unternehmen Herbstnebel, or Operation Autumn Fog, known to English-speaking audiences as the Ardennes Offensive, or the Battle of the Bulge. Despite some intelligence warnings of an imminent German attack, the Americans were mostly taken by surprise, and the Germans were able, over a 2-week period, to carve out the famous bulge in the Allied lines, from which the ferocious battle takes its name. However, many people don't know that just 7 weeks prior to Herbstnebel, a smaller-scale German offensive was launched in the Netherlands that came as a total surprise to the Allies and managed to penetrate the front line in several places. Some have called the operation a dress rehearsal for the Ardennes offensive, a scaled-down version of the December 1944 attack involving German Panzer and Panzer Grenadier divisions, launching a well-thought-out offensive at a weak point in the Allied lines. Now, a quick word from our sponsor. In my search for better ways to stay informed, I have partnered with an independent, non-partisan team, Ground News. Their app and website gathers the world's news in one place, so you can see how different nations are covering the same events. Simply click on an article. For example, UK Minister warns Putin as Royal Navy tracks Russian spy ship. This article is concerned with the Royal Navy closely monitoring a Russian spy ship that has entered British territorial waters. On the right is some data about how the story is being covered by the media. On the left, all the articles relating to this topic. If you click on any of these sources, it will take you to the original article. These features and more allow you to understand the events and narratives not being told, and have a more balanced, comprehensive view of the world. Go to ground.news/Felton to understand how context shapes history and the different ways we interpret current events at Ground News. Save 40% on their unlimited access Vantage plan today. The Netherlands had featured heavily as a battleground in September 1944, when Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery's Operation Market Garden had seen 3 airborne divisions, 2 American and 1 British, plus a Polish parachute brigade, land behind German lines to seize a series of bridges, followed by a thrust by the British 30th Corps to relieve each parachute unit in turn, to enable the Allies to hook around the side of the formidable Siegfried line defences in Germany and end the war in Europe by Christmas 1944. Unfortunately, Market Garden ended as a costly failure for the Allies, though it did result in territory being captured and held up to the city of Nijmegen and its environs. The British also were fighting to seize the important port of Antwerp in Belgium, vital to resupplying the Allied armies in northwestern Europe, and also prepared to launch a long-delayed offensive into the Ruhr industrial region of western Germany. A problem developed in the region west of the Maas River between the salient held by the Allies since Market Garden and the British 21st Army Group boundary with the US 19th Corps, part of General Bradley's US 12th Army Group, 11 miles north of the city of Maastricht. The area between the 2 Allied armies was called the Peel Marshes. To help strengthen the British for the forthcoming Ruhr offensive, Supreme Allied Commander General Dwight D. Eisenhower agreed to adjust the boundary between the 2 army groups, which, as I said, ran 11 miles north of Maastricht. US forces from the 19th Corps were to assume responsibility for a major proportion of the region west of the Maas River, freeing up 2 British divisions to move into the Market Garden salient to be used as a launching point for the projected offensive into the Ruhr. The US command released the 7th Armoured Division to 1st Army and the 29th Infantry Division. Eventually, these boundary changes resulted in the US 1st Army being assigned a giant thumb-shaped corridor about 16 miles wide that protruded some 40 miles into the British zone west of the Maas, the entire corridor amounting to some 500 square miles. The area encompassed the Peel Marshes, a vast fen covering 60 square miles between the Maas River and the city of Eindhoven, with a very limited road network. The Americans now worked to clear the thumb of Germans, estimated to number only about 2,000 to 3,000 troops. In reality, the corridor was garrisoned by a force 7 or 8 times in strength than the US forces assigned to clearing the area. General Kurt Student, the 1st Parachute Army, had stationed within the corridor General von Obstfelder's entire 86th Army Corps, consisting of the 176th Infantry Division and Parachute Training Division Erdmann, the latter made up of instructors and cadets from the Fallschirmjäger airborne schools, and of course contained a high proportion of decorated combat leaders and soldiers. Von Obstfelder's corps was then reinforced with the 3rd-rate 180th Replacement Training Division and also Kampfgruppe Walter, a combat team that had fought the British north of Fagel. It contained an armoured force, the 107th Panzer Brigade, with 7 Panzer IVs and 20 Panther tanks on strength. Von Obstfelder's specific orders were to halt the Allies as far to the west as possible. The US attack into the corridor was ready by the end of September 1944, still unaware of how strong German forces were in the region. In the first days, the US 7th Armored Division made strong attacks and advanced against a determined opponent, but by the 5th of October was stopped after advancing only 2 miles into the Peel Marshes, for the loss of 29 Sherman tanks, 6 Stuart light tanks, and some 452 men in 6 days of fighting. The Germans counterattacked the same day. The 6th of October, the American command ordered the 7th Armored Division attack called off. A few days later, Montgomery decided to halt his plan for an immediate drive on the Ruhr industrial region. Strong German forces were reported at the city of Arnhem. The British were still busy sorting out Antwerp, and the US 7th Armored Division attack at Overloon had finished. For the time being, Monty had to eliminate the German holdouts west of the River Maas. On the 8th of October, the decision was taken to change the 2 army group boundaries again and place the problem of the Peel Marshes in the British sector. However, the US 7th Armored Division was transferred to British command, being put under Lieutenant General Sir Richard O'Connor's British 8th Corps, and was ordered to take over a zigzag defensive line within, west and south of the Peel Marshes. From the town of Deurne, southeast along the Deurne Canal to Meil, a town in the marshes, and then southwest along the Norder Canal to Nederweert, and thence to the Maas River at Wessem. This was 30 miles of front, with limited roads and communications. The US division was assisted by the British-equipped 1st Belgian Brigade. Monty saw capturing the Maas River as a prerequisite to a British thrust into the Ruhr and ordered O'Connor's 8th Corps to launch an offensive. The British 3rd Infantry Division attacked Overloon, intending to push on to the town of Venray. The US 7th Armored Division was to make a frontal attack through the marshes from Deurne. The 12th of October 1944, the British offensive commenced, pushing into Overloon, but covering the 3 miles to Venray was impossible, such were the German defences. It took the British 5 days to cover the 3 miles to Venray, occupying it on the 17th of October. Monty ordered all offensive operations in this area shut down. The Germans now saw an opportunity to use their holdout position as the base from which to launch a spoiling attack to assist the German 15th Army, which was fighting hard against the British and Canadians in the Scheldt estuary and southwestern Netherlands, as the Allies tried to clear the Scheldt of German forces that were preventing the full use of Antwerp, recently captured by the Allies, and vital to the continuance of operations in northwest Europe. The German idea was simple. Launch a strong armoured raid from the Peel Marshes into the eastern flank of the Allied Market Garden salient. It might force the British to call off their efforts in the southwestern Netherlands, buying time for Germany's frontier defences, and happily for the Germans, forces existed to make this attack, even though Hitler was then secretly planning and marshalling forces for his enormous Ardennes offensive, due to take place further south in Belgium and Luxembourg in mid-December. Some force changes had already occurred on the Peel Marshes front. A powerful force, the German 47th Panzer Corps, had been moved behind the left wing of the 1st Parachute Army to perform training and rehabilitation, and became a reserve for Army Group B. In late October, the 47th Panzer Corps consisted of two armoured divisions, the 9th Panzer Division and the 15th Panzergrenadier Division. The 9th Panzer consisted of 11,000 men with 22 Panther tanks, 8 Jagdpanzer IV tank destroyers, 30 artillery guns, and 170 assaulted armoured vehicles, including many half-tracks. The 15th Panzergrenadier Division numbered 13,000 men, 6 Panzer IVs, 1 Panzer III, 7 half-tracks, and a single Stug 3 assault gun. The Germans selected the weakly held positions of the US 7th Armored Division along the Dörner and Norder canals, deep within the Peel Marshes west of the town of Venlo. The 47th Panzer Corps was ordered to attack on the 27th of October 1944, with the 9th Panzer Division supported by elements of the 15th Panzergrenadiers, and any armoured breakthrough would be supported by the 15th Panzergrenadier Division's infantry regiments. The main assault was directed at Meil, a town at the junction of the Dörner and Norder canals. The operational objectives, unlike the grandiose Ardennes operation that was to follow it, was to carve a quadrilateral bulge in the Allied lines 6 miles deep, accounting for 45 square miles of territory. The deepest point was to be Asten, northwest of Meil, along the Bois-le-Duc canal. Like the Ardennes attack, bad weather cloaked the offensive. Visibility was almost zero for a week prior to the 27th of October. The German assault opened at 6:15 a.m., like the Ardennes assault to come, with a 40-minute artillery barrage that came as a complete surprise to defending US troops, again leading historians to later suggest that the Peel Marshes operation looked like a small-scale dress rehearsal for the Ardennes offensive. Meil was held by the US 87th Cavalry Reconnaissance Squadron and was attacked by 2 thrusts by the 9th Panzer Division. The fighting was intense, but the outnumbered and outgunned US troops attempted a counterattack to no avail. Several miles north at High Track, another 9th Panzer thrust was made across the Dörner Canal, smashing a position held by another US cavalry unit. The 7th Armored Division reacted quickly, moving its Combat Command Reserve onto the Meil to Dörner highway to block the 9th Panzer's advance on the town of Dörner. But another highway northwest from Meil out of the marshes to Asten was still open. In the southwest, close to Nederweert, another 9th Panzer thrust caused a US cavalry unit to move back a little, but it was reinforced with tanks, tank destroyers, and armoured infantry by nightfall, stabilizing the front line. General O'Connor dispatched British reinforcements, allowing the US 7th Armoured Division to counterattack. Combat Command B of the 7th Armoured counterattacked on the morning of the 28th of October. CCB pushed southeast along the Dörner to Meil highway, while Combat Command Reserve drove southeast along the Asten to Meil road. However, by nightfall of the 28th of October, it was clear that the 9th Panzer's Reconnaissance Battalion had pushed on several miles from Meil towards Asten, and more German forces were positioned in force around High Track. At this town, the 15th Panzergrenadier Division had been committed, relieving the elements of the 9th Panzer to rejoin its division in its main push near Nederweert towards Asten. This German reinforcement meant that the 7th Armoured Division achieved little. The 29th of October, the Germans pushed on hard. US forces were pushed back half the distance to Asten, only halting the Germans using massive artillery fire. The Germans also thrusted northwest from High Track towards Dörner, and a second column advanced along a secondary road from the east. Both columns of Combat Command B fell back half the distance from Meil to Dörner. CCB made a stand in the village of Liesel, but was forced to withdraw. The loss of Liesel gave the Germans 2 more roads for a fast move on Asten. Liesel was also the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division's furthest objective of the operation, and it seemed to demonstrate the success of the spoiling attack. Generalfeldmarschall Walter Model now saw the potential of increasing the size of the spoiling attack into a full-scale counter-offensive. He demanded the 47th Panzer Corps was reinforced immediately with the 116th Panzer Division and the 388th Volksartillerie Corps, but neither of these units were available. At higher headquarters, staff officers noted that though rapid German gains had been made, most of this had been achieved on the first 2 days, stopped by strong American armored counterattacks and swarms of Allied fighter bombers, the latter harassing the delicate German supply and communication columns behind the front. The Germans had also lost about 30 tanks and tank destroyers by the 29th of October. Intelligence also showed that the German attack was not drawing any Allied units from their attacks on the neighbouring German 15th Army in the southwest Netherlands. The Commander-in-Chief West, Generalfeldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, ordered the operation halted to preserve the 9th Panzer and 15th Panzer Grenadier Divisions from further losses. However, just after Rundstedt ordered the operation's halt, the British 15th Infantry Division was withdrawn from fighting the German 15th Army to relieve the US 7th Armored Division's Combat Command B at Liesel and Combat Command Reserve southeast of Aston on the night of the 29th to 30th of October. This move now freed the 7th Armored Division to try and stabilize the situation at Mayol. British infantry and large amounts of British artillery completely stopped the Germans. Model had managed to obtain a concession from Rundstedt for the attack to continue in order to gain a better defensive line. Some support was also made by the Luftwaffe. Montgomery shifted another unit, the 53rd Infantry Division, to the sector to help contain the German operation. By the 30th of October, the front was stabilized. The next day, another British unit, the 4th Armoured Brigade, was moved in as well. The US 7th Armoured Division was now responsible only for the Nederweert sector. The Germans were also making changes. On the 30th of October, the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division was returned to Army Group B Reserve. In early November, the 9th Panzer Division also disengaged. On the 30th of October, the 47th Panzer Corps was transferred to the 5th Panzer Army area under General der Panzertruppe Hasso von Manteuffel. Montgomery decided to end his campaign in the southwestern Netherlands against the German 15th Army and place his entire 12th Corps on the right flank of the US 7th Armored Division along the Nederweert-Wessem Canal, with orders to drive northeast through the main German positions west of the Maas River to Venlo, preparatory to the joint operation with the Americans to reach the Rhine. The 7th Armored Division was ordered to attack along the northwest bank of the Noorder Canal. Once US tanks reached Mayol, the British were to assault the town with infantry. The 7th attacked through a 2-mile-wide corridor, its armour reduced due to the previous fighting by 65%. The fighting was heavy, but by the 6th of November 1944, the 7th had reached Mayol and the British joined the attack. However, the 7th was relieved on the 7th of November, the division being returned to the US 12th Army Group. The British delayed their assault on Mayol until 12th Corps advanced northeast from the Nederweert-Wessem Canal. The British advance caused the Germans to abandon Mayol on the 16th of November. The British pushed forward, and by the 3rd of December 1944, 13 days before the commencement of the Ardennes offensive, had ejected the last Germans from west of the Maas River 2 months after the Americans had begun the operation. The German operation in the Peel Marshes had demonstrated that the Wehrmacht was still very capable of making strong and very quick penetrations of Allied lines, a fact it would demonstrate in the later Herbstnebel and Nordwind offensives further south, but that it was often stopped by Allied artillery power and airstrikes that caused terrible supply problems. But in the final analysis, the operation in the Peel Marshes was successful in that the German divisions gained most of their objectives quite quickly, and the Allies did transfer some units south to deal with this problematic and unexpected raid that does in many ways resemble a scaled-back dress rehearsal for the Ardennes offensive. Many thanks for watching. Please subscribe and share, and also visit my audiobook channel, War Stories with Mark Felton. You can also help to support both of my channels at PayPal and Patreon. Details in the description box below.